conclusion without trying to break the silence between them. The streets that night were quite quiet, but the atmosphere inside the car was even quieter. Min occasionally glanced at Ling, hoping to find clues from her facial expressions, but Ling just stared out the window, her mind somewhere else. Min lowered his head, trying to digest Ling's cold words. After a few seconds of silence, Min lifted his head back up, looking at Ling with emotion-laden eyes. "All right," he said slowly. "I'll agree to break up, but only after the series My Shariam airs." Ling frowned, clearly unsatisfied with that answer. "Huh? I want to break up right now." Her tone became even more piercing. "Why would I delay and spend more time with someone I don't love?" Min remained calm, though Ling's gaze grew more intense. "Like you said, let's just say we're dating only in public." Min replied in a flat tone. "If we announce the breakup now, it will definitely ruin the viewers' view of the series, and the result, My Shariam's ratings will plummet." Ling was silent, her face looking tense. Min's words made her pause to think, but she didn't want to show that she was affected. "Can you imagine how Kandu, the staff, and the other players would feel?" Min continued. "All their hard work will go to waste if the ratings fall just because of your selfishness." Min's last sentence was truly piercing. Ling, who had been filled with emotion, was now silent, her face beginning to show confusion. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself down. Min might have a point, she thought, though it didn't change her feelings towards Min. "All right," Ling finally spoke after a while. "I agree. We'll pretend to be dating in public until the series airs. But don't ever expect me to love you again." Min smiled faintly. Her smile looked sly, filled with an unshakable confidence. "There's still time," he said in a low but steady voice. "I can still make you love me again." Ling stared at him with an intensifying gaze, her face serious and showing absolutely no signs of softening. "That will never happen," she said firmly, every word filled with certainty. Min didn't reply. He just smiled before finally turning around and walking out of Ling's house without looking back. Ling massaged her forehead, feeling exhausted by the conversation that had just taken place. She flung her body onto the sofa and leaned back, trying to get rid of the thoughts raging in her head. Although there was still the burden of having to pretend to be dating Min, at least she had been honest and expressed her true feelings. But one thing was certain, her love for Min was gone, and nothing could change that. A month has passed, and Ling's life feels much darker than before, especially since he met Orm. Now, her daily life is only filled with work, trying to show a fake smile in front of the crowd as a mask to cover the sadness that continues to haunt her. Gulping down the remaining coffee in her cup, Ling put the cup on the table and reached for her phone. Her gaze rested on the screen, where her heart was broken by the fact that Orm had blocked her on all social media and disappeared, seemingly giving her no chance to make things right. With slightly trembling hands, Ling opened her friend's group chat, reading through all the incoming messages. However, after a few moments of staring at the screen, she decided to turn off the phone. Ling stood up from her seat and walked out of the house to her car. Ling drove down the street in her car, and a few minutes later, she arrived at a karaoke place. Without hesitation, she stepped inside and headed towards one of the karaoke rooms where her friends were waiting. "Lingling Sirilak Kwong," exclaimed Angfa enthusiastically upon seeing Ling's arrival. Joining her were Charlotte, Lukmi, Sonia, and Anda. "You said you didn't want to come. What made you change your mind and come?" asked Charlotte, curious. Ling sat on a chair, answering in a quiet voice. I'm bored at home and my work schedule is still later in the afternoon. So after I thought about it, there's no harm in joining you guys now, she said, even though she actually didn't like karaoke places. Ling tried to enjoy the atmosphere. That's great, said Lukmi as she put her arm around Ling, who was sitting next to her. Consider it your consolation. Even though I know it's painful to be left behind by someone you love. You who were singing suddenly stopped and sat next to Ling. You said that Orm was going to get engaged to a man named Min. Do you know the background of that man? She asked in a serious tone. Ling shook her head slowly. I don't know, she replied briefly without expression. I think I do, Enda said, making Charlotte, Angfa, Lukmi, Sonia, and especially Ling look at her with curious eyes. Min Nikakun, you continue, is 25 years old and the son of a famous hospital owner in Bangkok. She is also the only child of a prominent family. You pause for a moment, observing the reactions of your friends. When I asked her, she said that she knew Orm very well. Ling's eyes begin to glow slightly. Intrigued by this information, she looks at you very seriously. Where did you find out about the man named Min? She asked. He's my cousin, you replied casually. When I found out Orm was going to get engaged to Min, I immediately asked him because I felt it was impossible. Min is gay, and her relationship with Orm is only because of an arranged marriage between their parents. Everyone in the room was surprised to hear your explanation, including Ling. A feeling of relief, mixed with anxiety, now began to wash over her after hearing the information. Why didn't you tell me this information from the start, so Ling wouldn't have to be so upset? Says Charlotte, looking at you protestingly. I didn't know that she meant my cousin. Ling only mentioned the name, Min. Do you think there's only one person named Min in the world? You replied to Charlotte. Out of curiosity, I asked my cousin, and that's the information I got. What a reliable friend. Angfa comments as she pats you on the shoulder, then turns to Ling. But why are you still looking gloomy? This information should bring you some relief, right? She asked again. Ling sighed, then looked at Angfa with a worried expression. I'm relieved, but what if their parents still insist on setting them up? She said. Take it easy, Anda replied, rubbing Ling's shoulder to calm her down. Min has promised me that she will talk to her parents soon, reveal that she is gay and reject the arranged marriage. Ling nodded, but the look on her face still showed anxiety. The thing is, Orm's father doesn't seem to like me. He once said that I only hurt Orm, she said in a soft tone, bowing her head. That can be overcome, Sonia replied with confidence. You just need to prove to Orm's parents that you really love and want to take care of Orm. If you can show that, I'm sure they'll accept you. Take it easy, Look, he said with an encouraging smile. I'm sure Orm still loves you. You just need to fight for your love to be together. Ling nodded again, this time with a small smile slowly appearing on her face. The words and support from her friends made her feel calmer, and even gave her new hope to fight for her relationship with Orm again. The longing was so deep that Ling could no longer contain herself. Since the last month, after every meeting with her friends, she always took the time to go to Orm's campus. Ling hoped to see Orm's figure from a distance, even though she didn't dare to approach him. To her, her presence on campus would only make Orm uncomfortable, especially if Orm felt that he was in the public eye because Ling appeared in public like this. Today, Ling stopped her car in the parking lot near the Faculty of Economics, the faculty where Orm studied, but different from usual. This time Ling really intended to meet and talk directly with Orm. The unbearable longing made her not care about the possible consequences. Ling felt that this time the meeting had to happen. Her eyes swept around the campus area carefully, but her main focus was on the main door of the Faculty of Economics, the place where Orm usually came out. In the stillness of her observation, Ling suddenly saw a familiar figure walking quickly towards the car. Ling squinted, trying to confirm that it really was Orm. "Where is he going?" she muttered under her breath when she saw Orm striding in a hurry. As Orm's car began to drive away, Ling immediately started her car and followed behind. Her heart was full of questions, trying to understand what made Orm leave in such a hurry. Does he have some urgent business that he has to drive that fast? Ling whispered to herself as she picked up speed to keep a short distance from Orm's car. The journey brought Ling to the front of a house with a high fence, where the car had to stop across the street. Ling looked at the house curiously as she saw Orm's car enter the house. "This isn't her parents' house," Ling muttered under her breath, still staring at the large building with curiosity. "Whose house is this?" she added while trying to digest all the possibilities that came to her mind. For a while, Ling remained in her car, waiting patiently. Her desire to know more almost made her want to get out and approach, but she chose to hold back, waiting without going any further. Only 30 minutes had passed when her cell phone suddenly rang. Ling sighed, feeling disturbed in the midst of her solemnity. With some reluctance, she grabbed the phone and looked at the screen. "Gosh, I forgot today's schedule," Ling muttered after reading a message from Best, her assistant, reminding her of a long-scheduled important agenda. Reluctantly, Ling returned her phone to its original place. Her gaze once again shifted to the house, her hopes almost inextricably linked to the possibility of meeting Orm. She wanted to wait a little longer, hoping to see Orm come out and get a chance to talk, even if only for a moment. However, her responsibilities called, and Ling finally chose to leave, leaving the house with hope still hanging in her heart. Today's photo shoot session was finally over. Ling breathed a sigh of relief every time she finished her work. Despite the exhaustion felt all over her body, being an artist was not easy. She was tired, but she couldn't just leave the entertainment world that had made her name. Taking a sip of mineral water to clear her throat, Ling sat on a chair, waiting for her assistant, Best, who was tidying up her equipment. "Huh?" Ling muttered when suddenly her vision was obscured by a hand covering her eyes from behind. Wordlessly, Ling quickly removed the hand and looked back with a flat face. "Min, what are you doing here?" Ling asked in a cold tone when she saw Min standing behind her. "Peebus said you were here, so I came to pick you up. I want to take you for a walk," Min replied with a smile, hoping for a warm welcome. However, Ling just sighed and replied curtly, "I can't. I'm busy and already tired." She stood up, trying to avoid Min's expectant gaze. "Come on, Ling. Just a minute. I just want to hang out with my boyfriend," said Min while holding Ling's hand, trying to persuade. "Huh? What boyfriend?" Ling snorted softly. He pushed Min's hand away from his grasp and gave him a sharp look. "Remember, we're just pretending to be boyfriend and girlfriend in front of the camera. Off camera, there's nothing between us." Min tried to hold on with a smile, then replied in a casual tone, but If we walk together, there are bound to be fans who catch the moment. Doesn't that count as dating in front of the camera? No, I don't want to, Ling emphasized once again in a high tone. Without giving Min a chance to reply, Ling turned around and walked towards Best, who was packing his bags. Kun Best, let's go home now, she said firmly. Yes, Kun Ling, Best replied while immediately following Ling's steps, who had already left the room. Without looking back at Min, Min could only stare at Ling, who was moving away with a disappointed expression. His hands were clenched tightly, holding back the anger and frustration rumbling inside his chest. When the surrounding atmosphere was quiet and no one was paying attention, Min vented his frustration by kicking the chair where Ling had been sitting, hardening his grip as if trying to hold back an emotional outburst. Orm, who had just entered Min's house, was stunned for a moment, transfixed by the sight that made his blood run cold. The room was a mess, and Min was lying on the floor with her face covered in cuts and blood. Without thinking, Orm rushed over to her, kneeling beside Min, shaking her body carefully. What happened, Phi? Asked Orm in a trembling voice, his heart pounding hard at the sight of Min's weak and helpless condition. Min slowly opened her eyes when she heard Orm's voice. With her remaining strength, she tried to get up, but her body still felt heavy. Orm helped Min slowly, carrying her carefully. Slow down, Min, Orm said softly, helping Min move to the sofa. I'm going to find a first aid kit to treat Phi's wounds. Wait a moment, he continued, then hurried to the room near the kitchen, where Min usually kept a simple medical kit. After finding the first aid kit, Orm returned to the living room and sat beside Min. Ya opened the box, took out a cotton swab, and began to clean the blood that covered Min's face. Her movements were gentle and meticulous, although her heart continued to wonder about what exactly had happened to Min. She chose to postpone her questions, giving Min space to recover for a moment. What exactly happened, Phi? Murmured Orm finally, unable to contain his curiosity any longer. The blood flowing from the wound on Min's face continued to soak the cotton, requiring Orm to change it several times. Min took a deep breath, her voice soft but clear. I had a fight with Phi, Min said quietly, averting her eyes as if she couldn't bear to look at Orm. Orm was startled. His hand stopped in midair. What? How could Min fight with Phi? He asked, incredulous. With a trembling voice, Min continued, remember that boyfriend I always told you about? Min is my boyfriend. We've been dating for 3 years. Orm's heart seemed to stop beating for a moment at that confession. He stared at Min in confusion, trying to digest her words. Dating Min? How come? He asked, Orm's voice filled with shock. Min nodded slowly, bowing her head. We met at a bar, and sometime after that we decided to pursue a relationship. At first, when I found out Min was dating Ling, he said that it was just work, so I let it go. However, in the past year, his attitude started to turn aggressive. Min started to get angry and say harsh words and hit me lately, said Min, admitting with a heavy heart. Orm looked at Min with teary eyes. Why didn't I tell you from the beginning? He said softly, trying to soothe the pain on Min's face. Min shook her head, her voice trembling as she explained. I originally wanted to hide this relationship because she's an artist. However, when Min went back to dating Ling for work again, I started to get suspicious, especially when he separated you from Ling. I wanted to tell you everything, but Min threatened to hurt me even more if I dared to speak up, Min said, holding back the sobs she had been trying to hold back. Orm was silent, still trying to digest Min's confession that seemed to reveal many secrets. The words kept ringing in his mind, tearing at his feelings. And the fight this time happened because I intended to report all of this to the police after finding many nude photos of Ling on Min's cell phone. Min continued in an increasingly shaky voice. Min admitted that he installed hidden cameras in the rooms and bathrooms of Ling's house so he could get the photos. Orm was taken aback, but not surprised by the deepening confession. I already knew about the photo, Orm replied quietly, bowing his head heavily. Pimian threatened me with the photo, and in order for her not to spread it, I chose to resign to keep feeling safe. Min looked at Orm, her eyes filled with sadness. So this is your real reason for resigning? She asked, almost in a whisper. Orm nodded slowly, smiling faintly as he tried to hide the sadness rising in his chest. Yes, I didn't want Peeling to get into trouble or get hurt because of Min's actions. Min cupped both of Orm's cheeks, her voice shaking violently when she finally spoke. The tears that had been held back flowed down her cheeks. I'm sorry, Nang. If only I had the courage to reveal this relationship from the beginning, he might not have gone to this extent. Orm grasped Min's hand, trying to give her strength. It's okay. Fi, everything has happened. Orm replied, his voice hoarse from the sobs he was holding in. While tears began to flow unstoppably, Min looked at Orm with determined eyes, though his body was still weak. I promised to solve all this, Nong. Even if it cost me my life, I'll do it. Min might try to kill me, but I won't back down. I have to protect you and get you back with Ling, Min said in a firm voice accompanied by tears. Orm could only be silent and hug Min's body tightly. He couldn't imagine how Min would face all this alone. The information Min said made Orm just know how cruel the figure of Min, who always seemed friendly when in public,